Well, thanks for watching us again here on our Elder's Voice video at High Point Baptist Church. You know, we're restricted, obviously, to everything being online, and we have access to any number of online preachers, online teachers, and so on and so forth. And that has brought a question, a unique question that was a problem that we needed to deal with before, but especially now. Which preachers, which teachers, which Christian counselors are reliable? There are a lot of messages that are being broadcasted now and Christians are wondering about. There are those who are saying this is God's hand of judgment against America for its sins. And so, is it? Well, to respond to that, I would say, I don't know. That sounds a little bit too much like Job's counselors. Of course, God had allowed Satan to buffet Job in a variety of ways, and Job's friends came as counselors and assumed to know what God was doing. They assumed to know that this was God's judgment against Job, and God was displeased by that counsel because they ultimately didn't know what God was doing. And we also know what God's judgment against a nation looks like in Romans chapter 1. You remember in Romans 1 verses 24 to 32, God tells us exactly what his judgment against a nation looks like. And in short, to summarize it in just one way, God turns mankind over to his sin. In other words, he lets us do whatever it is we want. If we've postured ourselves such that, well, obviously, you're not going to follow the law of God, you disregard him, you're like in Psalm 2, uproaring as a nation and just removing the bonds that God has set over us and rebelling against his name, well, then God is just going to let us do what we want. He's going to turn us over to our sin, and we're going to heap up for ourselves eternal wrath, eternal punishment. So, a coronavirus or any other, is that God's judgment against a nation? Well, God will providentially use those things, but I don't think we have a good leg to stand on to say that this is his judgment. We also have those who are saying, well, this is a sign that the end of time is here. This is it. God is about to bring his wrath against the whole world. This is about to bring in the tribulation because, wars and rumors of wars, there's going to be disease and God is going to do all of these things. Well, but if we pay careful attention in Mark chapter 13, Jesus tells us that there will be signs and wonders, and there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, but the time is not yet. In other words, disease and famine and earthquakes and those kinds of things. Yeah, read Revelation chapter 7 and 8 and 9, and we'll find out exactly the kind of global destruction that God is going to bring during the tribulation. But Jesus tells us that things like the coronavirus, things like wars and natural disasters, that's just indicative of the church age that we live in. But the time is not yet. And then Jesus says at the end of the chapter to be watchful. And no one knows when the Lord is coming. So we're not to try to project or guess when the Lord is going to come by reading into the signs of the time. That's exactly the opposite of what we're to do. What we are to do is to cry Maranatha, Lord, come quickly. So, how exactly can we discern? Maybe we're not as biblically literate as we would hope to be, or maybe as discerning as we would hope to be. And so, with all of these online preachers and teachers and everything else, how do we discern who I should listen to and who I shouldn't? This was a problem that actually pre-existed before everything has gone online, and it's going to continue to exist afterward. And that's where I want to point you back to your local church. That is the best way for you to discern who are teachers and preachers that you yourself can trust. This has always been the problem with so-called flat screen churches and churches that are emphasizing disproportionately a media ministry, and so that you don't necessarily have to be a part of the corporate assembly on Sunday, but can be perfectly comfortable as a stay-at-home Christian, as a as a living room Christian, or whatever the case is, or doing church, quote unquote, at home. But we need to remember the qualifications that are outlined for the overseer. And those tell us how we can trust our teachers. You remember those qualifications. It begins with the universal rule that the overseer, the pastor, the elder, he's got to be above reproach. He has to be a one-woman man, literally is how we would translate that. He has to have children who believe, not who are accused of dissipation or rebellion. But again, he has to be above reproach as God's steward. He has to be able to manage his household well. This is how you discern his integrity. He has to be not self-willed, not quick-tempered, not fond of sordid gain, not addicted to wine. But rather, instead of those things, he's got to be hospitable, literally a lover of people. He has to be a lover of what is good. Here's an interesting one. He has to be sensible. Sensible. That word can also be translated as serious, and that's another way that we could translate it and understand it. It means that he gets his priorities right. He knows what he's supposed to do in ministry, and he handles it with the utmost seriousness and concern. He doesn't take a juvenile, lightweight approach to ministry. He doesn't treat church ministry like it's some game at a pep rally. He recognizes that souls have been entrusted to his care, and that is a serious thing, and he needs to handle it seriously, not presenting his ministry like he's flippant and careless, and like this is just like a whole bunch of fun. We're worshiping the King of Kings, and he is entitled and given the responsibility to administer soul care to people, and that has real consequences, eternal consequences. Beyond that, here's another good one. He must be just. That's a good word for the church that has been just capitulating to the social justice movement that is anything but just. Well, beyond that, he also has to be characterized as one who is holding fast to the faithful word. That's important. He has to hold fast to the faithful word. He has to be a lover of doctrine, a student of God's word. The conduct of his ministry must be characterized by saturation with the depth of God's word. High view of preaching, high view of teaching. So that, because Paul writes, there's going to be many deceivers, interesting, which is the very issue that we want to deal with right now. And so he has to be able to exhort in sound doctrine and refute those who contradict. There's a dual component why he must be characterized by holding fast to the faithful word. Now, we look at those prescriptions and we think, well, why is that related to his handling of God's word? Well, it's one word that we can summarize all of it. Integrity. Integrity. Those qualifications are there, not because they're just a bunch of things that we can check off on a list when we're looking at hiring a new pastor or what have you, but it's because those things tell us the character of the man. Does he have integrity? Do these things, how he has set in order his life, reveal to us his heart? And if it shows that he has integrity, then he's going to handle the scriptures themselves with integrity. And that's why I'd encourage you. You might be a member of High Point. You might be a member of another church. To go to your local pastor whom you know and whose character is evident before you in a way that you can't know online preachers and others who are on the media and whatever the case is. Now, I'm not saying don't go to other sources and things. We can be enriched by other online ministries. And your local pastor, who's proven his own character and his integrity, can help you with that. You know, Grace to You, the Grace to You app is hands down, there's no question in my mind, the best app, the best online ministry for your sanctification, for your growth in righteousness. It is reliable. John MacArthur has for so many years proven his integrity time and time again in his handling of the scriptures. And I listen to Grace to You all the time when I go on a daily run, or I'm splitting firewood, or just about anything that I'm doing. I'll try to listen to a sermon and enrich my soul with that. So again, I'm not saying don't do those things. What I am saying is trust your local pastors. Look to them first as your source of being fed. That's what you need to do, because that is the most reliable way of discerning trust. Can I trust this person and what they are saying about this pandemic or about anything, the way I should think biblically about them? I hope that's helpful. Take care. God bless. And remember, whatever you do, do all for the glory of God.